Welcome back to the VR workshop. Yeah, we are back in the workshop after a couple of weeks of epic racing and touring the US and trying to break the land speed records, but it's all over, we're back. The bike and equipment came back yesterday, and now it's the painstaking job of unpacking and then looking at some engines to see what happened and see what went wrong, dissect all the issues that we had. But I'm really not in the humor. So instead, I'm going to sit here and answer a bunch of questions that I've been getting asked over the course of being back. So we should probably start with an overview of how we got on during the World of Speed event. Did we break a record? No. Did we get close? Excruciatingly so. Yeah, we got real close. We had failures, as you would expect, with any racing way of pushing vehicles to the limit. But we were that close to a record, and we even qualified for one of the runs as well, which was a bit frustrating. But it was good. The people were fantastic. We learned a lot again. And yeah, we'll be going back. But one of the things that we noticed in the build-up and when we were there, and obviously when we come back, from people that we meet in person, from social media, from here on YouTube, I'm getting lots and lots of questions, and some of them quite basic questions about land speed racing for the layman who may not know. We've been living and breathing this for 3 years now, over 3 years, so it's almost second nature to us now, but it's not a well publicized event or things to do. Everybody knows about who can go the fastest in the world, but other than the major thrust SSC, things like that, there's not a lot of common knowledge below that. So we've been compiling questions that we've been getting over that course of that period, and we're just going to fire through them all right now. So the first one is, what are the basic rules of land speed racing? So unlike drag racing or something similar, land speed is measured over a certain point, be it a kilometer or a mile. In our case, it was a mile. And your speed is the average between that 2 mile points. Now last year, because we were licensing up, we were only getting measured from the 2 to the 3 mile. But on our last run last year, we qualified for the long course. If you do 175 miles an hour at the 2.25 mark on the course, you can then qualify for the long course. So we qualified last year. So this year, we were just doing all our runs to the 5 mile, as much as we could, which means your measure point is between the 2 and the 3, 3 and the 4, and the 4 and the 5. You get 3 bites of the cherry, but it's average of their fastest measured mile. And once you have that, and assuming you've done it faster than the current record, you can then qualify, which means your bike goes in an impound, and then you get to run the next morning, and you have to back up that record. And it's your average of the 2 runs, which is your potential world record. From there, you have classes. So what class did we run in? We ran in a special construction frame, blown, so supercharged. You can be supercharged, turbocharged, or nitrous. Obviously, for us, we're turbocharged, and gas. So it's standard, what they class as pump fuel. It's not alcohol. So that's the class we've got. And also in our class, it's 1000 cc. For the SETA regulations, it doesn't matter if it's 2-cylinder or 4-cylinder. FIM regulations do matter. And the bike was actually built initially for FIM regulations, hence the Ducati engine. And from there, we are a non-streamlined class. So we are not allowed to have any streamlining or any aerodynamic aids on the bike at all, which makes things a whole lot harder. So the next question, how was the World of Speed event? It was fantastic. It was initially thought it was going to be quite a quiet event. There wasn't a lot of entries, but there seemed to be a massive influx of entries at the very last minute. I think there were 120 odd competitors there, 100 to 120, something like that. Mixture of cars and bikes. This year they only had the single course because the salt condition wasn't that great. So along with us, who are obviously trying to reach speeds of 200 miles an hour, we also had the 130 club and the 150 club running side by side, which was great to see because you now get to see all these different vehicles. There was a couple of guys on Vespas, which with these tiny little wheels doing the speeds 80 odd miles an hour, it just terrifies me. But it was really good to see a mixture of everybody who's just out there trying to do their own thing in the class that they are running in. Fantastic people, well-run event, busy but not too busy, loved it. I'm glad we went back to the same event that we learned about last year, and we will go back to that event again. I thoroughly recommend it. How was the course? Bumpy. The course was very bumpy. The salt condition has not been the best. We've been to Bonneville 3 times. The first time it was underwater, so we had no idea that salt was. We were there last year. The salt condition to us was amazing. But we did notice a big difference this year. It was a lot more dirty, it was a lot more thin. You could see a lot more brown patches all the way through it. And the initial couple of miles of the course were very bumpy. Now, fortunately, we had the opportunity to run the 5 mile because we're qualified for the long course. So most of the runs were actually just feathering it until you got past the 2.5 mark before actually getting on the gas and trying to do something. The bumps were pretty horrendous. I since found it was slightly better on the right-hand side of the course, but it was fairly bad. And then up towards the end of the course, in the slowing down area, it got pretty wet and slushy. But all in all, it was a workable salt. You could lay down some speed. One thing, because of the wet salt at the very end, one thing we were doing this year, which we were not doing last year, is cleaning up the bike after every run. There was so much salt accumulated on the bike that you had to scrape off again, especially in the inside of the mudguards. We've actually noticed we've got a huge gouge in our front tyre where they've just had this massive buildup of salt and it's actually been scraping away at the rubber. It was one of the earlier runs we noticed that, so after that we were making sure we cleaned out inside the front mudguard as well to make sure it wasn't hanging up and everything. It was a lot more maintenance intensive, but it did clean up pretty well. Next question. Did I have any scary moments? Yes. Not that many. The bike with the turbo setup, we had a lot of wheel spin last year. Huge amounts of wheel spin last year. It seemed to be better this year for sure. As you're going up the gears, coming off the line, yes, it spins, and I'm now at the case where I'm just living with it. It's fine. 90 miles an hour as a change gear, and it generally wheel spun and got out of shape there. 120 miles an hour was another gear change and did the same thing. It spun up there. But it was, if you know it's coming, it's manageable, so it's not as much of a scary moment as it was last year. It was the second day, first run of the second day, was probably my scariest moment to date on that bike. We were coming into the 4 mile part of the course. Because it was morning, the sun wasn't glaring on the speedo, so I could actually read my speedo. We're doing 194, 195 miles an hour. Everything felt great, bike was solid, and it was there for a long time. And I'm thinking, we've got this. This is it. We're going to qualify for the record. We've got this licked. And at about the 4.5 mark, the whole bike just started to oscillate, just ever so slightly, and got worse and worse and worse. And it's the first time where I thought, I'm off. This is going to take me out. Rolled off the throttle, came out the wind. It stabled itself back up again. And by the time I got back on the gas, went through the 5 mile markers, and I think our average was 191.6. So we lost a bunch of speed, but it was a twitchy moment, shall we say. It was probably the twitchiest moment I've ever had in that bike.